Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Sorry for the long delay, but between work and life, my channel's had to kind of stay on the back burner for a while. That being said, I'm finally finished scripting out a 3-part series debunking the concept of race realism, and that should be coming out soon. In the meantime though, I felt that this was a critically under-addressed issue that I was compelled to speak about, and want to use my tiny platform to make others aware of the true scope and magnitude of this very, very dangerous issue, and how much these young men and women are risking in standing up against the People's Republic of China, which from here on out I'll merely refer to as the PRC. The complexity of China's past is several lifetimes of research on its own. Even winnowing the focus down to the post-Maoist China is too much for me to be able to address in something like this, so I'm going to be missing a lot of nuance with this video that's well worth looking into. All that being said, I guess the best place to start is Hong Kong itself, and why these protests are being allowed to occur in a nation that generally handles threats of dissent and wrongthink far, far more violently. Unlike the rest of the country, Hong Kong has been a conduit through which China has dealt with the Western world. Ever since it was officially in British hands, to this day, its special status within the PRC has given it a level of freedom not available anywhere else under the PRC's control. It is that special status that has allowed these protests to escalate in the way it has without the PRC utilizing its usual methods to silence dissent. But make no mistake, the young men and women there fighting to maintain autonomy have put themselves at a very real risk, a risk that grows larger the longer and longer the situation goes on. The more the world at large becomes indifferent to their plight, the greater the chances become for China to decide to take the gloves off and shut this protest down. These protesters have decided to try and force a resolution by focusing their efforts on disrupting businesses in the region. It's a bold play, and it's one that could either force the PRC to back off and start negotiating, or it could lead to them deciding to go all in and shut down the protests once and for all. One must make no mistake, the latter is a very real and very terrifying possibility. To give you, my audience, a sense of what I mean by how terrifying this possibility is, we'll need to take a detour to the province of Xinjiang, where China borders both Kazakhstan and Mongolia. There, the local Uighur population is facing a threat from the PRC that is very different than that going on with the protesters in Hong Kong. I'm going to be reading some excerpts from an article by The Week detailing one woman's experience with the PRC's re-education centers. I'll warn you now that some of this content will be disturbing, but I hope you'll stick through it and thus gain a better understanding of why this matter is too critical to be ignored. The following readings will be from an article in The Week, where Sairago Swatbai, her name is down below and hopefully I pronounced it pretty close to correctly, a local preschool teacher, relays her experiences of living in one of these internment camps for approximately 2 years, getting imprisoned after her husband and 2 children have been able to flee the country to neighboring Kazakhstan. Obviously, I won't be reading the full article, which itself is a larger piece from Haaretz magazine. Again, I must warn you that this content will be very disturbing. In November 2017, I was ordered to report to an address in the city's suburbs, to leave a message at a phone number I had been given, and to wait for the police. After she arrived at the designated place and left the message, 4 armed men in uniform arrived, again covered her head, and bundled her into a vehicle. Following an hour's journey, she arrived in an unfamiliar place that she soon learned was a re-education camp, which would be her prisons in the months that followed. She was told she had been brought there in order to teach Chinese and was immediately made to sign in documents that set forth her duties and the camp's rules. I was very much afraid to sign, Swatbai recalls. It said there that if I did not fulfill my tasks, or if I did not obey the rules, I would get the death penalty. The document stated that it was forbidden to speak with the prisoners, forbidden to laugh, forbidden to cry, forbidden to answer questions from anyone. I signed because I had no choice. And then I received a uniform and was taken to a tiny bedroom with a concrete bed and a thin plastic mattress. There were 5 cameras on the ceiling, 1 in each corner and 1 in the middle. The other inmates, those who weren't burdened with teaching duties, endured more stringent conditions. There were almost 20 people in a room of 16 square meters. 172 square feet, she says. There were cameras in their rooms too, and also in the corridor. Each room had a plastic bucket for a toilet. Every prisoner was given 2 minutes a day to use the toilet, and the bucket was emptied only once a day. The prisoners wore uniforms, and their heads were shaved. Their hands and feet were shackled all day, except when they had to write, and even in sleep they were shackled, and they were required to sleep on the right side. Anyone who turned over was punished. Further on in the article, SWAT estimates that there were about 2,500 inmates in the camp. The oldest person she met was a woman of 84, the youngest a boy of 13. There were school children and workers, businessmen and writers, nurses and doctors, artists and simple peasants who had never been to the city. The camp's commander set aside a room for torture, SWAT relates, which the inmates dubbed the Black Room, because it was forbidden to talk about it explicitly. There were all kinds of torture there. Some prisoners were hung on the wall and beaten with electrified truncheons. There were prisoners who were made to sit on a chair of nails. I saw people return from that room covered in blood. Some came back without fingernails. On one occasion, SWAT herself was punished. One night, about 70 new prisoners were brought to the camp, she recalls. One of them was an elderly Kazakh woman who hadn't even had time to take off her shoes. She spotted me as Kazakh and asked for my help. She begged me to get her out of there, and she embraced me. I did not reciprocate her embrace, but I was punished anyways. I was beaten and deprived of food for 2 days. The fate of the women in the camp was particularly harsh, SWAT relates. On an everyday basis, the policemen took pretty girls with them, and they didn't come back to their rooms all night. The police had unlimited power. They could take whomever they wanted. There was also cases of gang rape. In one of the classes that I taught, one of those victims entered half an hour after the start of the lesson. The police ordered her to sit down, but she just couldn't do it. So they took her to the Black Room for punishment. Tears stream down her face when she tells the grimmest story of her time at the camp. One day, the police told us they were going to check to see whether our re-education was succeeding, whether we were developing properly. They took 200 inmates outside, men and women, and told one of the women to confess her sins. She stood before us and declared that she had been a bad person, but now that she had learned Chinese, she had become a better person. When she was done speaking, the police ordered her to disrobe and simply raped her, one after the other, in front of everyone. While they were raping her, they checked to see how we were reacting. People who turned their head or closed their eyes, and those who looked angry or shocked, were taken away and we never saw them again. It was awful. I will never forget the feeling of helplessness, of not being able to help her. After that happened, it was hard for me to sleep at night. And I'll leave the article there. There's far more to it, but yeah. If you're still watching, thank you for staying with me through such a difficult rendition. But if Cyril could endure such torture and share her story, the least I can do is try and get this to a larger audience. It's the very least I can try and do. This is how China handles dissent. Although the nation as a whole has made tremendous leaps forward since the dark days of Mao, they are still, nonetheless, an authoritarian regime that handles dissent in a way reminiscent of both North Korea and Soviet Russia, meaning they handle it with force, brutality, and total indifference to human life. I cannot say for certain what the end will be for protesters in Hong Kong, but people in the rest of the world need to be made more aware of just how bad it could get if the rest of the world stops paying attention. So, back to the title of this video. Why should atheists, or the atheist quote-unquote community, be paying more attention to the situation here? Well, the fact is, like it or not, China is a country where religion is only barely tolerated in the best of circumstances, and those who are believers of one kind or another are always under greater scrutiny than those who either don't believe or keep their beliefs private. The Uyghurs themselves, the ones most predominantly found in these re-education camps, are a perfect example of that. In terms of public perception, particularly among believers, These nations are examples of an atheistic nation. Personally, I don't think the shoe fits. The PRC leadership could just as easily have been devoutly religious and no less barbaric when it comes to suppressing dissent. But if us non-believers want to make an impact, this can be a valuable place to do so. Apostates and heathens like us could draw a lot of attention to this cause and show that we are just as critical of violence and intolerance from irreligious groups as we are of violence and intolerance from religious fanaticism. I don't have much of a voice on this platform, but if you can help me spread the word about this, I hope to reach as many people as I can, and hopefully in the process draw as many eyes as possible to what these young men and women are risking and just how important it is to speak out against it. Well, anyway, that is all I have for you today. Like, share, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Mainly, if you want more people to know about what this situation could devolve into, please spread this video around. The situation in Hong Kong right now is critical, yet the world's attention is starting to wane. Don't let the PRC get a chance to handle the situation the way that they want to, because if they get the chance to do so, things are going to get very ugly, very fast. And that's all I've got. Thank you all. Stay safe out there. Take care, and bye for now.